Hello everybody, my name is Ryan. Today we're on the last part of the three-part series about maximising your muscle protein synthesis. So this part is all about your recovery. The first thing we're going to touch on with recovery, perhaps the most important, is your sleep. The study present here is looking at the effects of 14 days of being in a caloric deficit compared with having 8.5 hours sleep or 5.5 hours sleep. So the 8.5 hour sleep group are the ones on the graph which have the white dot, and the 5.5 hour group is the one with the black dots. So I want to draw your attention to the fat-free portion of this graph, where you can see the weight loss in fat-free mass, which is basically muscle. And what we can see is that the 5.5 hour group actually lost more muscle than the 8.5 hour group. So you can see that this is statistically significant. So just by cutting out on 3 hours of sleep and being sleep deprived, you're actually losing a significant portion of your muscle. So what are the mechanisms behind this? Well, they can attribute this to anabolic hormones like testosterone, growth hormone, IGF-1. And the result of all these hormones being suppressed or downregulated means that we get a decline in protein synthesis. And on the other hand, we've got a increase in catabolic hormones like myostatin, which for those of you who don't know, myostatin is a sort of regulatory protein of how much muscle you can carry. So the less myostatin you have, the more muscle you can have. And next we've got glucocorticoids. So with glucocorticoids, we get an upregulation in anti-inflammatory proteins. And we don't want this because then we get a lessened satellite cell proliferation, fusion and differentiation, which is essential for muscle repair and muscle growth. So the simple key to countering all this is just get enough sleep. You need at least 7.5 hours at the bare minimum per night to sort of offset these negative effects on your muscle growth and muscle protein synthesis. Next, we're going to talk about deloads. So on the screen now you can see this little graph I've made looking at someone's training cycle progression versus their level of fatigue. So if somebody's not doing any deloads whatsoever, we can see that their fatigue accumulates and accumulates, then it levels off. This is where they're knackered and they can't really do much more because they're so fatigued from doing all the work. And if someone's really pushing hard about taking deloads, eventually they'll get an overuse injury or they'll just burn out and then they'll stop training, so then the fatigue comes all the way to the bottom because they haven't been doing anything because they've had to stop, which is not conducive to muscle growth by not training. On the other hand, if you look at the deload group, we can see that they deload roughly every 6 weeks. So we see quite a bit of a spike on the 5th week. That would probably be where someone does a little overreaching phase, and then what happens is then they take a week of a much lower training volume. So what that allows them to do is recover, supercompensate. So they're still gaining a lot of muscle in compared to the no deload group. But what they've done is they've dropped the fatigue levels right down so they can start the next cycle fresh, and then they repeat again. And this way is much more conducive to muscle growth and longevity within a lifter. So we need to deload every 4 to 8 weeks. More on the end of deloading more frequently if you're running an aggressive program like the Smolov-based mesocycle. And if you're running something moderate, you can deload every 6 to 8 weeks and get away with that. Now, I want to talk about ice baths and how they're actually, quite frankly, shit. So the present study here looks at the effects of using cryotherapy on a damaged muscle in a rat. Now, how do you damage a muscle in a rat? Well, the scientists did this quite an easy way, just smashing the rat's legs with a hammer. So that causes quite a lot of muscle damage. And then in the 2 times they did this, one of the rats had no cryotherapy and the other had cryotherapy. So basically just subjecting the muscle to cold temperatures. And in the no cryotherapy group, we can see all these little black dots scattered around everywhere. These are macrophages, which are a constituent of white blood cells. And these play an important role in facilitating muscle repair and muscle growth. So the more macrophages we have, the less muscle fibers die, and the more of a sort of muscle growth response we get. But you can see in the picture of the cryotherapy group, there's not as many black dots. The macrophage count is much less, so we're getting a lower amount of muscle repair, which is definitely something we don't want if we're trying to get as big and as strong as possible. So that's with the decrease in macrophages, we get a decrease in satellite cells, which are important for, again, muscle repair and muscle growth, and then that results in a decreased muscle recovery overall. So do not do ice baths if you want to recover. They're a stupid idea. Based on the other research out there, I wouldn't do them at all, and there's no need. That's pretty much it from me. Thank you for watching this 3-part series. Catch you all time.